I'm Alfonso Mendoza, host of the My EdTech Live podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 236 of the House of EdTech podcast, I am sharing a conversation I had at a recent AI conference because it's important that we move forward. Why are we dragging our feet with artificial intelligence? I've also got my EdTech thought. Let's strike up the band.
Welcome to the House of EdTech. My name is Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech launched in 2014, giving me the opportunity to speak with teachers, leaders, and creators so you can more effectively integrate technology, strengthen your pedagogy, and have more confidence in your classroom and school so you can make an impact. Get involved with the podcast by visiting my website, chrisnessie.com. Using technology isn't difficult, and this is where it begins. This is the House of EdTech.
And we are getting close to the end of November, which means it's almost December. Welcome inside the podcast. I am so glad, as always, that you are making time to make this podcast a part of your professional development. Anytime, anywhere. I really appreciate it. If you're a brand new listener, welcome aboard. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things here at the start of the episode. Number one, if you're listening to this episode before Saturday, November 18th, 2023, and you're in New Jersey, you've got to come to EdCamp New Jersey 2023. There is still time to register in advance, or you could show up the day of and also register. Go to edcampnewjersey, spelled out, .com, and you can find the link to register for free. And if I don't, I will say this, EdCamp New Jersey is, hands down, the largest and the best EdCamp that exists. Okay, we have got over 400 people registered for EdCamp New Jersey. And I think the numbers are still suffering from a COVID lifestyle. I also think that people are just a little bit burnt out by professional development. And EdCamp is a great way to get involved and really take control of your professional development. So if you're listening to this after November 18th or you're nowhere near New Jersey, look around inside of your network and see if you can find an EdCamp that you can attend, because they are super fun, super valuable, and I try to get to EdCamps whenever I can, and being able to run one for almost a decade has been a game changer in terms of how I see professional development and really not only taking control of my own, but helping to create something that's valuable for other educators. So there's that. EdCamp New Jersey, Saturday, November 18th, 2023. Also, because of when I'm recording and releasing this episode, we are getting near the end of the calendar year, which means it is almost time for the 10th annual House of EdTech Smackdown. And I want to invite you to participate in this year's Smackdown. I do this every year. It's always the last episode of the calendar year, and it's your opportunity to share with the entire House of EdTech community something you have loved, learned, hack, tool, website, app, you name it. Okay? What have you loved here and got value from in 2023 from education technology? And we do that Smackdown style. If you want to participate, sending me a voicemail or some type of voice message is the best way to do that, because this is a podcast and I want to play those audio clips and share your voices on the show. Shout out to Stephanie Howell. She submitted the first entry for this year's App Smackdown, so maybe you will be number 2, and that's okay. Let's make this the best EdTech Smackdown yet. Again, this is 10 years. We're coming up on the 10th birthday of the House of EdTech in January of 2024, so I want you to be a part of this Smackdown. Go to chrisnessie.com/voicemail, and you can submit your voicemail about something you have enjoyed here in education technology in 2023. If you want to see what other people have shared, go to chrisnessy.com/all-time-smackdown. And thank you, as always, to Derek Larson, former substitute host of the show and longtime friend of the podcast, for maintaining that Google Sheet, which you can check out at, again, chrisnessy.com/all-time-smackdown. Get your entries in by December 1st, 2023, and that last episode of the calendar year will come your way before the new year. Now, my EdTech thought. All right, for this episode's EdTech thought, I know I have talked about this before, but it bears repeating, and maybe if I say it a different way, it'll make sense to more people, and you might be able to help me spread the word. You also might disagree with me, and that is totally okay. We're not here to agree with each other. We're just here to have a conversation. So I have seen on social media, be it Twitter or Threads or Blue Sky, people really here in 2023, for some reason, I don't know what's with the moon or in the water this year, but a lot of people are really coming out hard against cell phones in schools and cell phones in classrooms. And I saw another, I think it was on Twitter X today, from Matt Rhodes about how 5 years ago-ish, I'm paraphrasing his tweet, about 5 years ago, he would have been dead set against banning cell phones in schools. And here we are in 2023. And basically he's saying, hey, yeah, let's ban them. Let's get rid of cell phones in K-12 education. And I think anybody who believes this is wrong. Now, this is my opinion. You might differ. You might be fed up with cell phones in your classrooms. To which I say, and I might get some flack for this, then you're not doing your job good enough. All right? If cell phones are a problem in your classroom, that's on you. What is the environment that you are creating? Right? We all realize how vital these devices are to not only our lives, but to our students' lives. All right? Yeah, we could say they're addicted and, the dopamine and, the notifications. Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but the phones keep us connected. We have the world's knowledge at our fingertips, and we're able to respond to things in real time. Okay? We live in a connected society. And I'll be honest, unless you as the teacher are willing to also give up your cell phone between the hours of the school day, then, be quiet, right? We're on our phones too, okay? So yes, do sometimes students misuse them to text or play games in class? Absolutely. But take a look at your classroom management, right? If kids are turning to their devices because they're not doing what they should be doing for you, what are you asking them to do? What environment are you creating that is drawing the kids in? Okay? And honestly, why should we punish everyone for the mistakes of a few? I'm sure we can all think of students that we have or have had in the last couple of years that they're very responsible with their devices. They are respectful with their devices. But we're going to ban all the cell phones because a couple of knuckleheads, Johnny and Susie, in the back of the room, they're, constantly on their devices. What are you doing with classroom rules and classroom management? All right? Banning cell phones, I think it assumes the worst in students. And let's be honest, that kind of assumes the worst in people in general. It signals a lack of trust. And honestly, I think it will breed resentment. Kids have a tough enough time wanting to go to school here in 2023. Let's take away their cell phones and give them a real reason to hate going to school, where for 6.5 hours or more, they have limited to no use of their devices. That is so vital to the world that they live in, right? You and I probably did not have cell phones when we were doing our K-12 education. I didn't get my first cell phone till I was a sophomore in college, okay? I don't know when you got your first cell phone, but, it's become integrated in our lives. Classrooms need to evolve with the times. The world is digital now, and students must navigate this landscape. And don't tell me, oh, they're one-to-one with their Chromebooks. Let's be honest. 9 Chromebooks out of 10 are pieces of crap. Okay? They're not the greatest computers. All right? Yeah, you can get some high-powered Chromebooks, but that's not what school districts are buying for students to use. Sheltering them from technology solutions helps nobody. Let us keep our devices and work together to maximize their academic potential. The learning benefits, in my opinion, far outweigh any potential distraction. With cell phones in hand, we are ready to take charge of our education. We can truly empower our students to use their devices for good. We can get them to participate in class more actively. We can encourage them to pursue their passions. They've got a very powerful computer in their hands and in their pockets. Why not show them what it's truly capable of as they connect to the world in a real way? Do not cut off this lifeline. Let's work together, students and teachers, mostly teachers, to set realistic ground rules so we can truly unlock the power of these cell phones for good. I believe that together we can really leverage the technology to truly create an engaging, relevant learning experience. But banning cell phones completely? That would be a tremendous mistake. And that's my EdTech thought. And now it's time for the featured content for this episode. I recently had the pleasure of attending an AI conference here in New Jersey, and much to my surprise, this conference was attended by superintendents, directors of curriculum. I was one of, I think, 3 classroom teachers in attendance at this AI conference, and I also brought along John, the student teacher, as well. So you figure 4 classroom teachers with about 50, 60 other people who are these high-ranking district officials. Had the pleasure of happening to have my podcast mobile gear with me. If you're familiar with what I did at ISTE 2023, I happened to have my podcast stuff with me in the trunk of the House of EdTech mobile. Yes, that's a thing. And I want to give a quick shout out to the upcoming conversation you're going to hear in just a second. Shout out to Robert Zywicky, Richard Tomko, and Stanley Buchesky. Robert Zywicky is an accomplished superintendent, and he is a professor who coordinates professional development programs for the Center of Effective School Practices through Rutgers University. Dr. Richard Tomko, he is the superintendent of schools in Belleville, New Jersey. And Stanley Buchesky, he is the CEO of PyTop, which is really changing the game with making computer science education accessible to a lot of schools in a lot of environments and different demographics. So all of their contact information will be in the show notes out at chrisnessy.com/236. And now here is my conversation with Robert Zywicky, Richard Tomko, and Stanley Buchesky.
And joining me now here for the featured segment, I just spent a great day here on Election Day at the East Brunswick Magnet School. Shout out to my former high school principal, Jorge Diaz, for opening up the venue and the space. And I am joined now by 3 very prominent people in the world of artificial intelligence. That's right, folks. We're bringing you another conversation about AI because it's not going anywhere. I want to introduce Dr. Robert Zywicky. How are you, sir?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm great.
Rich Tomko, how are you?
I'm good.
You are a superintendent of schools?
Superintendent, yes.
Whereabouts?
Belleville, New Jersey.
Belleville, New Jersey. Essex County. And we have Stanley Buchesky.
Hello. Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm the CEO of PyTop.
The CEO? Why didn't anybody tell me he was the CEO of PyTop?
He's the big chief.
The big chief. Welcome to the House of EdTech to all 3 of you.
Thanks very much.
So today was all about artificial intelligence in education. There were a lot of superintendents and district leaders here, but give the listeners a sense of what the purpose of today was.
So the purpose of today was to help the leaders who feel completely inept and unprepared to field questions about generative AI beyond ChatGPT? What are the administrative tasks they should fulfill in the next year or so to integrate it, legal pitfalls, equity issues, and beyond that, how it can actually enhance instructional efficiency, make teachers' lives easier. And in some ways, for these superintendents and administrators are here to reestablish themselves as instructional leaders coming out of COVID and get on top of that next trend in AI. Beyond fear, this year I think people were tinkering, and then next year is the implementation year and how they can go and lead in their communities and have these conversations as we head into the new year.
Before we go on, we did have a keynote speaker today who, I guess he had to leave.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Mike and what he's all about.
Dr. Michael Connor, who's the CEO of Agile Evolutionary Group, former superintendent who, during the pandemic, wrote a whole book about looking at all the frameworks that are out there in education.
I did not write a book during the pandemic.
Definitely not. There was too much stress. And about looking at all those frameworks, how to disrupt them, and what his conclusion was that AI is the next big disruptor. And he wrote this, 2.5 years ago. And so now, it's a great book to take a look at, but, really bringing together those business models with those educational models and what's the path forward for, our Generation Alpha kids. And so it was a great keynote. Mike did a phenomenal job, and I think really energized people before we got into our breakout sessions.
I would definitely agree, and I will include a link to all of his information and the book and everything in the show notes. You'll be able to find that at chrisnessy.com/236, episode 236. Dr. Tomko.
Yes, sir.
As a superintendent, why was it important for you to be here today and to be involved in these conversations in general?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we ended on something like that, a question on the panel, but this room should have been filled with superintendents and curriculum instructors. And I think we're getting in that, post-COVID, back to the same old stuff again, which is starting to bother me a little bit because, obviously COVID changed the entire landscape. We know that.
Or it should have in theory.
Yeah, 100%. But again, and I've been around 25 years as an administrator, so I know I don't look old, but I'm getting there. But I'm older. I'm one of the more seasoned superintendents.
I don't know. There was some guy in the keynote talking about being in a wheelchair in a couple of years.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. But again, I've run the gamut of technology and influences, and I mentioned the calculator joke when I was in school. But I think a lot of administrators, teachers, people in the field, I think we're afraid. We're afraid to to grasp it, and we're always waiting. Oh, we can wait. But AI's here. It's not going anywhere, and you all in the breakout session showed some incredible things that our teachers can use. I think one of the issues that I have that I didn't get a chance to talk about is there's so many things coming so fast, right? And it's how do you get somebody to tell us about all of them? I think you shared 75 sites or whatever. There's probably more than that, triple. I
think 5 more just came out in the time we're talking.
Probably. It was a great point that was made there. If I could just bring it up, I think it's important for your listeners too. Is like you said, last year's speech, right, from AI is this year it's way better. And I think the question I asked in the breakout room was, if 2 people typed in the same question for ChatGPT, for example, would and the answer was you get 2 separate answers because it's learning, it's constantly learning. So. You really just have to jump onto this and utilize it because it's, you're going to get run over by the bus instead of jumping on it.
I love that. What are some of the things that you do as a superintendent, as the lead learner of your district, to kind of push this forward and empower your teachers or your administrators to, I guess, get this going in the direction you believe it should go in?
No, absolutely. It's interesting. So I've been, in a few different districts, and boards are very important. And I always see the board as a slice of the community, right? So I have 7 board members now, so they're 1/7. They represent 1/7 of the stakeholders. But I think getting them involved is more important, than anything else. And I get support from them, and I think because we have the total buy-in, it's not just me pointing and choosing, but I think the teachers are in the trenches. If we want the kids to grow, and I'm not really into, Dr. Zywicky will tell you, I'm not really into the assessment piece, for lack of a better, understanding of, what schools rank number 1 versus what schools rank number 600. I think there's so many different hurdles. There's, socioeconomic factors. So it's tough to gauge what's really happening in a district, but you can always gauge someone's growth. I have 4 children myself. One of my children is the best reader in our family. One of my children's not the best reader in the family, right? But it's the same family, right? So it's the same thing here. So kids can grow, and I think that's important. So I think one of the ways of getting this influence in there is the people in the trenches are the ones that do the teaching. That's the teachers. So they need to be part of this conversation on the forefront. We need to fill up rooms of teachers. These kinds of rooms with teachers. So I think that's the next step, is really getting their voice with some of these apps. Do you want me to purchase for you, and are you going to use them? And we have some seasoned teachers still that are in there, a little afraid, but I think getting the kids involved, letting the kids help you with those apps, isn't a bad thing either. So.
And that's something I've talked about here on the show many times. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, as a classroom teacher or even as a school leader, because we can all learn from somebody, whether it's the kids, our colleagues. So I think that's a very important message. Stanley, the big CEO, you were here representing your company, PyTop. Give us a little overview about what PyTop is and what it can do for schools, districts, and students.
Sure. So thank you for having me. And PyTop is it's a computer science department in a box. And the reason we position it that way is because schools across the country have been given a mandate by their states to start teaching computer science. And if you thought it was hard to find a computer science teacher before these mandates, forget about it. So one of the things that we've done is we've just made it super easy to get going, to get set up, and to teach computer science. We say any teacher can teach computer science using PyTop, whether it's a math teacher, the science teacher. We actually had one of our teachers here today from the Bronx. He's an English teacher teaching computer science. It's pretty exciting, and so we make it all about the teacher, but we also make it about what are we trying to teach kids today. And I always come back to jobs, right? And what was important to discuss today, I think, was we're really at this big tipping point with AI and the power of AI and what it's doing, and as a tool is dramatically changing the future jobs. Well, as educators, how are we going to prepare students for the future workforce? And it's dramatically different now. It's going from we talked about the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? To C's. It's creativity. It's critical thinking. And there are a lot of C's in there that are not your rote memorization. They're not mechanical things. They're not things that AI can do. And so we really are trying to focus in on the difference between what can AI do better than humans, and what can humans do better than AI, and then teach that way. And we're also teaching in a very top-down way. So we don't start with Bloom's taxonomy, where we just memorize lines of code for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then finally you do some basic, simple project. We start at the top. We give you a project to build with your hands. It's super engaging for students. It's apply what they learn to the real world and solve real world problems. We give them the code and just say run it. And so they suddenly have a functioning project that connects them with the outside world, and then we dissect it and say, what else can you do? How does this work? And then they start learning to do higher order thinking and differentiating themselves from the machine.
When you think about AI and what PyTop does, how do you bring the two together? So if I'm a school or a district, or I'm a superintendent, and I want to bring that into my district and have teachers leverage it, how is that going to help us move forward in AI? What is it that makes PyTop unique?
Well, so I'll give you an example, and we did a live demo of using ChatGPT to write code today. So you don't need to memorize code anymore. ChatGPT is there to write it for you. But what we did in the example is we wrote code to gamify some lights. We created the game Simon, the memory game, right? Which incidentally always wins against a human.
I've never beat it.
You eventually lose. But what was cool about it was it's prompt engineering. It's the English language. Whatever you ask it in English, it's going to spit out something. And so the better you are at figuring out how to get the results you want, that's the training. That's what we're trying to teach kids to do. And so part of the series of prompts that I had to do, one was write me code to do this game, and then I had to do different parameters to say, I need this kind of LED lights, and I need 3 of them, and I want to add a buzzer. But then it started spitting out errors, and those errors were incredibly confusing. I still don't understand any of the syntax of the errors. I copied it. I pasted it into ChatGPT and I said, troubleshoot this code for me, and it gave an explanation of what that error meant, which I was able to read and understand, and then dissect the code and see where that actual error was. So that's really our approach to learning, which is very different from the kind of computer science 101 book that you read through and just want to burn.
Yeah, no, and that's powerful. That's I think that's real critical thinking, and you've got that AI help to kind of make it better, flatten that curve a little bit, right? I want to come back to you, Dr. Tomko. When you use AI as a school leader, can you give an example or two of how you, in your role, are able to leverage it? And I want you to speak to all the superintendents out there who are like, no, I can't use it.
You know, it's really interesting you say that, because we were doing something the other day. I was trying to think of the title for a new program that we were coming up with. So had some ideas, got some feedback from my cabinet, you know, of different things. And then I put it through ChatGPT. I know we're talking about that a lot today, but and I got like 25 ideas for a title, you know, and it was great. I mean, you know, I think we combined a few words there, you know, but it's incredible. And I think I said it before, it's like using a consultant. You know, I see it that way. I don't see this copying, pasting it, and, you know, I just see it as making things better. You know, I know a few years back, some of our colleagues got in trouble for copying, pasting speeches, like graduation speeches and stuff like that. You know, and that's just you know, a little out there. You know, if someone takes the time to write something, you know, out of their own, you know, intellectual property, you know, you should give them some respect for it, you know, or some citation for it. But I think the idea of AI is just constant learning feed, right? And I think the artificial intelligence part is learning from other things, right? So it's not one particular source; it's a bunch of sources collectively spitting out the best data or more enhanced data. So I don't think there's anything wrong with using it. You know, I was in Washington last year at a week conference, and they were talking about AI a lot, because it's, you know, it's up and coming, and I think a lot of people are still afraid of it. And one thing I would say to all the administrators out there is, don't be afraid of it. You have to try it. Right, utilize it, and if it can make your kids better, it can make your teachers better, why not use it? That's what it's about, you know. So I don't know. I think it's really scary, again, that people are really afraid, and we're waiting for someone to say we're not going to use this anymore. You know, it's also like the cell phone thing. I brought up the calculator, but then the cell phone. Right, don't bring your cell phone to school. Now we use them for safety. You know, for if there's a lockdown, there's an app for lockdowns, for bullying. There's calculators on there. There's apps on there. It doesn't make any sense anymore. You know, bilingual. We're talking about bilingual students. You could use interpreter apps. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So again, I think we should be in that post-COVID taught us anything. We should just embrace it quicker, you know, just to get there quicker. Yeah. But
move quicker. I love it. Rob, with what you do at Rutgers, you know, your name tag says Center for Effective School Practices. What are some things that you are working on that involve AI? Maybe it's more events like what we had today, but what's coming down the road as you see it?
Sure. So, you know, for the past 10 years at Rutgers, my role has been, you know, the coordinator for professional development at CESP. And so we always said that, you know, I use a very bad example, but, you know, remember the dummies books that were all over the place?
Yes.
You know, home repair for dummies, plumbing for dummies, you know.
Podcasting for dummies.
All that stuff. That basically, you know, for school administrators and teachers, they don't have time to read peer-reviewed papers. So the idea being that we were always the folks who would, you know, host events like this, do in-district support to really give that this is exactly what you need to implement this research-based pedagogy. So over the years, we've done, you know, the PBL Summit was a big thing. We've done a lot with MTSS and RTI, you know, out there in graduation rate and things like that before it happened. During the pandemic, we did a ton of virtual presentations. And then kind of after the pandemic, we haven't been able to get people together. So this has been an amazing partnership with, you know, CESP, with East Brunswick Magnet School, with NJ ALAS, and then NJAEL, which brings together all the educators in New Jersey. And so it's being on the forefront of a couple things. One, I think it's a new consortium of professional development. Second, to get out there with AI in a way that really starts the conversation, because where we were with the panel discussion is that people are waiting for other organizations to, you know, to give them guidance, waiting for the state. It's not happening.
Somebody needs to take the first step.
You got to get out and lead. And so my breakout session today, you know, was about giving superintendents the tools so that they can, at their reorg meeting, say, here's the checklist we're going to use, that kind of an amalgamation of all the templates that are out there, putting on my former superintendent hat. How am I going to tackle this going into that implementation piece? And then the second breakout session was about how can I have value and show some of these tools to teachers, how it can make their lives easier. Because listen, superintendents have had to deliver all these mandates, masks, no masks, PARC, NJSLA, evaluations, SGOs. How's about this? Being the superintendent can be like, I'm going to give you 10 tools that's going to make your life easier, right? So, that was awesome. And then the other thing too is usually we would not tie in a sponsor the way we did with PyTop. But, I was on the governor's computer science task force, helped write the NJDOE standards. And one of the things I kept saying over and over again, and Mike Salvatore was the other superintendent on there with me, was how are districts going to implement this, right? Like we have no real boots on the ground guidance for, is this going to be in the media center? Is it going to be in science class? Is it going to be in math class? And so when I first discovered PyTop, I was like, this is the answer. We can give this to principals. We can give this to superintendents and say, you guys are non-compliant with the standards. You haven't done this. You can implement this and have a hub. I think when it comes to computer science and AI, there's a real equity issue on who's going to have access to all this. And the future when it comes to jobs is getting all kids hooked on computer science. And I think PyTop is a great vehicle to do that. And so I'm really happy that today we were able to combine the pedagogical mission of Rutgers, give superintendents tools, give them tools for districts, give teachers tools, and then at the same time connect them with an amazing product that right out of the box can bring computer science to our kids.
Stanley, I want to swing back around to you as we start to wrap it up. With PyTop and AI, let's make something that's going to date this episode. Let's make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen with AI in education over the next, I can't say 10 years because really date the content, 12 months. What do you think?
I think it's the same thing Dr. Tompkins said, which it'll be accepted, just like cell phones. I mean, it used to be, you can't bring your cell phone into the school building. I mean, the greatest learning tool in the history of the world was prohibited in a learning institution, right? I mean, how ridiculous is that? And it's the same thing with AI. It's on the same level as cell phones in terms of a learning and productivity tool. It's inevitable. We will embrace it. Schools will embrace it. Teachers will embrace it. I can't tell you how many people I hear talk about how much easier it made their lives because they just stopped doing the mindless things that were unnecessary and focused their brain on the difficult tasks.
Dr. Tomko, let's hear a prediction.
Wow. Hopefully it's going to be sooner than sooner than later. I mean, I think...
I'll be honest, though. I kept hearing the word committee, and that just says we're slamming on the brakes on so much.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that's the... New Jersey is I'll just say New Jersey. There's a few different states I deal with, but in New Jersey, we love underfunded mandates, mandatory things that we have to do here and there. So, and I think we do a great job of getting... upper administration to comply with some of those things, but then it just, now what? And Rob was just talking about, today he did a great job of talking about the pedagogical sense and then saying, well, I'm not just going to show you what you should do. Here's the application with the PyTop, right? So, I mean, we need to do more things like that, I think, as leaders. We have to stop talking about it and just start doing it, and I think the only way you do that is by getting people like us to just start doing it, Rob brought up the NJAL, and I know it's something that we're very passionate about now is this whole AI and technology. We're a newer organization that just started, but we know that a lot of other organizations are pushing it away. We don't want to do that. We're the voice of the leaders in New Jersey, so it's something that we want to do. So hope this is a great starting ground for that. So my prediction is that an organization like that we'll take the bull by the horns and we'll do the best we can for our kids here. And by the time we do get to that model of what we think it's going to be. There'll be something else, but at least we'll be there. So that's my prediction.
I love it. All right. I want to thank you guys. Rob, I want to thank you for a great day.
Thank you.
PyTop, Stanley, thank you for sponsoring and supporting the event.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks
again, being on the panel. And I hope you don't find yourself in a wheelchair anytime soon.
That's right. Hey, listen.
If you know, you know. Real quick, how can my listener get in touch with you if they want to connect with you? Websites, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're at. How can people connect with you?
At Zywicky on Twitter is good, and that's ZYWICKIR.
At Belleville Super, BELLEVILLE, Belleville Super. So that's great way to contact me.
Yeah, and my email is stanley@pi-top.com, pi-top.com, or you can visit our website, which is and see our learning management system, which is further, FURTHER.pytop.com.
I love it. Gentlemen, thank you for being here on the House of Ed Tech. Everything will be in the show notes out at chrisnessy.com/236. And let's put a bow on this episode.
I want to thank you for tuning in once again to this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. If you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and follow this podcast so you can make it a part of your anytime, anywhere professional development. Again, I'd like to thank Robert Zywicky, Richard Tomko, and Stanley Buchesky for having a conversation with me at the AI in Education Conference recently here in New Jersey. If you want to get the most out of this episode, make sure you go check the show notes, which you can find at chrisnessy.com/236. I also want to let you know that I genuinely enjoy hearing from you, and I really value your feedback and your perspectives. Whether you have thoughts on this episode, or you've got questions about a recent episode, or any topic that's related to education technology, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me, feedback@chrisnessy.com, or better yet, because this is a podcast, go to chrisnessy.com/voicemail. Your input and ideas will help me create better content and improve the podcast, so please share your thoughts with me. If I've never heard from you, I am very much eager to connect with you. If you know someone who would benefit from listening to the podcast, I encourage you to share it with them. Spread the word on social media. Spread the word with your mouth. Word of mouth is the best way to share a podcast that you love. Your efforts will help me reach a wider audience of educators who will also get value from the podcast. Thank you in advance for helping me share House of Ed Tech. Lastly, I would like to invite you to become an awesome supporter if you're getting value from my content. I make, honestly, through the Awesome Supporter Initiative, pennies per hour with what it takes to produce one of these episodes. But I am incredibly grateful and thankful for those who are getting value and giving value back. I want to thank Jeff Herb, Peggy George, Dan Gallagher, Mike Messner, Matt Miller, Brian Carpenter, and Aaron Cummings. If you're getting value from the show, I would love it if you would consider giving some value back. Go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. And your generosity will go a long way in helping me to continue delivering the content you have come to expect from the House of EdTech. The next episode will be episode 237. It'll be a post-EdCamp world. We'll be closer to the EdTech Smackdown, and that'll come your way on November 26th, 2023. If you can make it to EdCamp, that would be great. If not, let's connect. Until next time, thanks for learning with me. And remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.